Hi there. Today I would like to talk about rare earths and their effect on new world order, and also maybe the next geopolitical battleground. In fact, there is an invisible force powering the modern world, and a force so essential that without it, our digital age would simply collapse. Um, it is not oil or natural gas, nor is it coal or uranium. It is something far more elusive, hidden deep within rock formations, scattered across mountains and deserts, and rarely seen yet constantly used. These are the rare earth elements, and 17 obscure metals with complicated names like neodymium, terbium, and lanthanum, etc. Most people have never heard of them, but every single person on the planet relies on them every day. Um, Without these metals, your phone wouldn't vibrate. Your electric car wouldn't move an inch. Your wind turbine wouldn't spin, and your satellite wouldn't orbit. And the advanced fighter jets that define modern warfare simply couldn't fly. Rare earth elements are the quiet heartbeat of modern technology, the hidden foundation beneath the digital, electric, interconnected world we live in. Despite their name, rare earths are not actually rare in nature. You can find them in many parts of the world, but they never appear in pure form. They are trapped inside complex ores alongside radioactive materials like thorium and uranium. Um, Extracting them is expensive, messy, and chemically intensive. And refining them is even harder, requiring sophisticated industrial capacity and a willingness to tolerate severe environmental damage. And most countries do not want to pay that price, and China did. And that decision reshaped the world. Today, China produces around 60% of the world's rare earths, but more importantly, it processes more than 85% of them. And it doesn't matter if the ores are mined in the United States, Myanmar, or Australia. Most of them end up in China for refining. And that wasn't a coincidence, but the result of decades of quiet, deliberate strategy. Back in the 1980s, when China was still opening up its economy, Deng Xiaoping made a remark that seemed obscure at the time. The Middle East has oil, China has rare earths. And while the world was focused on globalization and cheap labor, China was quietly building a mineral empire, not through pipelines or tankers, but through refineries, smelters, chemical facilities, and long term planning. For years, Western companies happily outsourced the dirtiest and most hazardous parts of the supply chain to China. And it was cheaper, it was easier. It allowed them to maintain a clean environmental image while keeping high tech production at home. But everything changed in 2010 when a diplomatic dispute erupted between China and Japan over the Senkaku Islands. In an unprecedented move, China halted rare earth exports to Japan, and prices skyrocketed. Tech factories around the world panicked. And overnight, the global economy uh, realized how dependent it had become on a single country. And that moment was a turning point. It proved that rare earths were not just industrial inputs, but strategic leverage, um, geopolitical tools capable of reshaping global power dynamics. Um, just as Russia once wielded its natural gas pipelines as instruments of pressure, China demonstrated that it could use rare earths as a silent but powerful weapon. Um, the shock forced the Western world to wake up. The United States reopened its Mountain Pass mine in California, which had been shut down for environmental and financial reasons. But reopening the mine didn't solve the problem. The ore still had to be shipped to China for processing because the United States no longer had the refining capacity it once possessed. The supply chain seemed intact, but the value chain was entirely in Beijing's hands. And over the next decade, the United States launched a critical mineral strategy, and the European Union announced its Critical Raw Materials Act. Japan, Australia, Canada, and South Korea all started investing in alternative sources and new processing facilities. Billions of dollars were poured into mining projects across Africa, Latin America, and Australia. Yet no country could replicate China's uh, ecosystem overnight. Rare earths are not just about digging up dirt. They require chemical knowledge, logistics networks, trained labor, and decades of industrial experience. And the global scramble for rare earth resources triggered a new kind of geopolitical competition. Just as oil shaped the politics of the 20th century, critical minerals are shaping the geopolitics of the 21st. The Democratic Republic of Congo holds the world's largest cobalt reserves, crucial for electric vehicle batteries. And Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia form the lithium triangle, home to more than half of global lithium resources. Africa and Latin America have become the new frontiers of mineral diplomacy. Uh, China moved early and investing in infrastructure, railway roads, ports, and refineries in exchange for access to resources. While Western governments debated frameworks and standards, China simply acted. And the Belt and Road Initiative evolved into a global mineral supply network, connecting the mines of the global south to the manufacturing hubs of the east. Um, Now the United States and the European Union are racing to catch up, offering clean alternatives, um, green investments, and debt-free financing. But China holds a two-decade advantage. And another part of the story, which is often ignored, is the environmental costs. Rare earth mining and refining are extraordinarily dirty. The chemicals involved create toxic lakes and radioactive waste in places like Inner Mongolia's Baotou region. Entire landscapes have been sacrificed to fuel the world's tech revolution. Ironically, the clean energy transition uh, still relies on dirty processes somewhere else in the world. Mm, the geopolitical struggle over rare earths is deeply intertwined with the broader technological rivalry between the United States and China. And behind the headlines about 5G networks, semiconductor bans, and trade wars lies a simple truth. None of these advanced technologies can function without rare earths. And when Washington restricted semiconductor exports to China, Beijing responded by threatening to limit rare earth magnet exports, a subtle but powerful reminder that both sides hold strategic leverage. Um, this growing tension is part of a larger trend, the fragmentation of globalization. The world is dividing into competing economic blocks, separate technological ecosystems, and rival rival supply chain networks. It is not the Cold War of the past, but a new Cold War of supply chains. The weapons are not missiles, but export bans, tariffs, and technological restrictions. The battlefields are not territories, but critical minerals buried beneath the earth. And amid this competition, middle powers like Turkey, India, Vietnam, and Australia are emerging as important players. And Turkey recently announced significant rare earth reserves in Eskişehir, potentially positioning itself as a regional supplier between Europe and Asia. On the other hand, India is investing heavily in its own refining capacity. Uh, Australia's Lynas Corporation stands as the only major non-Chinese company capable of mining and processing rare earths at scale. And these countries may not dominate the global market, but they can reduce dangerous dependencies by diversifying supply. The deeper we look, the clearer it becomes that the rare earth story is not just about power and geopolitics. It's also about people. Um, in the cobalt mines of the Congo, thousands of workers, including children, they dig with their bare hands under perilous conditions. In China, villages near rare earth waste ponds suffer from contaminated air and soil. And the world's shiny green technologies, I mean, its batteries, turbines, and electronics, they are built on invisible human suffering. Unless the global supply chain becomes more ethical and sustainable, the future risks repeating the injustices of the past. Only this time, in the name of climate progress. Looking ahead, the world faces a choice. Rare earths could become the spark of escalating conflict, fueling a new era of resource nationalism. And countries could hoard minerals, impose embargoes, and weaponize supply chains. Or the world could choose a different path, one built on cooperation, transparency, shared technology, recycling innovations, and responsible mining practices. A more balanced future is possible, uh, but it requires global leadership, industrial strategy, and moral responsibility. And in this sense, the story of rare earths is ultimately the story of the 21st century, which is a story about invisible materials shaping visible power, about chemistry merging with geopolitics, and about resources that most people uh, overlook, but every nation desperately needs. China's dominance today resembles the power once held by the great oil producers of the past. But the race is far from over. The United States, Europe, Japan, India, and many others are now fully awake. The next decade will determine not just who leads in technology, but who leads the world. That's why we are entering an era where the most decisive battles will not be fought with armies, but with supply chains, not over land, but over access. And buried deep beneath deserts, jungles, and mountain ranges lies the true battleground of our time, and the rare earth elements that power everything. Um, because the nation that controls these minerals will control the future. Thank you for listening and watching me.